So we're going to be answering a couple questions in this video. I got them written down right here. So what is meditation? We're going to answer that. What does meditation look like? Why do we meditate? What do we get from meditation? How do we do it? And then when we do it, where do we do it? How do we position our bodies? What is the best time to meditate? And then finally, the last question we're going to answer is, how do we know when we are truly meditating? Like, how do we know if we're actually meditating or if we're just wasting our time? So we're going to answer all these questions in today's video. So let's go back to the beginning, right? What is meditation? So meditation is the process of being self-aware of our thoughts, self-aware of our bodies, self-aware of our position in space, self-aware of the feelings that we get. It's really about bringing awareness onto ourselves. This is what we call introspection. What does meditation look like? A lot of people commonly get this wrong. They might think meditation is like sitting down and going or even floating or something crazy. You have to be doing something weird and crazy and so specific for you to be meditating. That is not actually true. As long as you're being aware and putting your attention on where you want to put it, you're meditating. For example, if you are in the flow state, which everyone has definitely experienced when they're either playing a sport or they're writing or they're drawing or they're doing something creative, playing games, everyone has had the opportunity to be in the flow state. That is an act of meditation because you are being aware. You're so aware that everything else falls away. Your body falls away. You're not thinking about, oh, am I comfortable or this or that. You don't think twice about those things because you're so engulfed in what you're doing. This is a form of meditation. So we're going to talk about that too. The next question is why do we practice meditation? Why do we do meditation? And the reason for this is we want to get past the analytical mind and we want to go down into the subconscious level. Why do we want to get into the subconscious level? Because that is where different feelings and thoughts are coming from. They're coming up to the surface and that's where they come to us, and that's where we need to get to the root of our problems, right? So we can't change something about ourselves if we don't even know ourselves. And this is actually one of the videos I talked about before, is basically how to find the perfect spouse. And one of the things is you have to write down all the things you want. And the reason for that is you need to know yourself. And I was saying with the observation period and whatnot, go ahead and check out that video. There's going to be a card at the top of this video. But like I said, we want to know ourselves. And that's also part of the meditation. Real quick, so I forgot to say the analytical mind. Right? So when I say the analytical mind, what does that mean? It means, for example, let's say we get a thought and we're like, oh, is this a good thought or a bad thought? Or, like you're just making judgments on everything. If you're making judgments on everything that you're thinking, that you're seeing, you're in the analytical mind. When you wake up, you're not in the analytical mind. When you're in the middle of the day, you're most likely going to be in the analytical mind. You're thinking, oh, am I wasting my time? Am I doing something good? Is this the right thing to do? These are all questions that you're asking yourself that is using the analytical mind. You're analyzing and analysis, right? So that's what we're trying to step away from, because we're analyzing things that are coming from the subconscious. That's where we want to go. So we've explained what does meditation look like, why do we meditate, and what do we get from meditation, right? That's the next one. So when we're able to pay attention to our subconscious mind, that's what I was saying, that we're going to get into the roots of what we're thinking and why we're feeling it. And that's how we're going to start to change ourselves. So everything I'm saying here is based on the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And that is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be changing ourselves from the roots. We're going to change out these roots. We're going to clip them so that way we can grow new leaves, new branches that come to the surface, which is the fruition of our efforts. Next step, now that you know all these things, how do we meditate? So like I said before, meditation does not have to be formal where you're sitting down or you're floating or on a mountain or whatnot. It can happen anytime. You could do it all day. And well, when I say you could do it all day, it's you start to become in a mode where you can do it all day. But it does not mean you have to sit down somewhere formally and do it all day. In the beginning though, when we start doing our meditation practices, I do have a guided meditation that we could do. We do want to do it formally, because this is how we do practice. When you do practice for a sport, you practice one thing. Let's say you're hitting a baseball, you're doing one motion, one action. Or you're hitting golf, you're doing one motion, one action over and over to get the repetition. So that way later it comes easy. So in the beginning, it is more formal. That's just the process. But then later you'll notice you can just do it anytime. You can just start paying attention. You realize, oh, I've been on autopilot. That's really what we're trying to get away from. Everyone has gone into autopilot. When you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you realize you're not even thinking about it. You're thinking about something else. You're somewhere else. and you're just doing the same thing. If you're driving a vehicle, you probably have gone into autopilot. You're driving home from work, or you're driving go to the grocery store. It's the same drive. So you're not really thinking too much. But the first time you're driving, you have to pay attention. You're very aware. Or you're driving somewhere new. You have to pay attention. You're very aware of all the signs and whatnot. So we want to step out of the autopilot mode in terms of our thinking and emotions and our thoughts and feelings. Next step, where are we going to meditate? So when we meditate, we don't want to be somewhere that already has an associated feeling with it. For example, your bed. If you're doing meditation in your bed, you're going to be thinking about sleeping. So that's not where we want to do any kind of meditation, because that is associated with a different feeling. Your kitchen is associated with food and whatnot. So you don't want to do it in a place associated with a feeling, right? So where are we going to do it? You could do it somewhere different, maybe not in your bed, maybe a different part of your room. You could do it outside in the grass. You could do it in the living room, but you want to do it somewhere where you're going to be distraction free. So there's no phones, keep put your phone on silent. No one's going to be coming in to you, walking in on you, or asking you to do things, or bothering you, or walking around you. Maybe like you start hearing too many footsteps. You want it somewhere to be quiet. Distraction free basically, and like I said, and you want it to also be comfortable. So how are we gonna position our bodies? That's the next step. So when we position our bodies, we're gonna be either sitting, so like I'm sitting in a chair. We're either gonna be sitting with our eyes closed, or we can be sitting on the floor, on a pillow, on a carpet, eyes closed. When we do meditation, we're gonna have our eyes closed because our sensory inputs take up a majority of our brain, of our sensory awareness. So that's where we're going to close our eyes. It's going to relax the brain. We're going to go down into the deep stages of different brain waves, which is going to help us get into the meditative state. This goes along with positioning your body. So when is the best time that we are going to meditate? The best time for us to meditate is going to be 2 parts of the day. You can only choose one. I mean, you don't have to choose one, but I'm saying it's going to be early. Just choose one. Don't make it too difficult on yourself. Anything that we're trying to learn, we don't want to make it hard. If it's too hard, we're going to stop. Either early in the morning when you wake up, or late at night before you sleep. So you have 2 opportunities a day, great opportunities a day, to do this meditation. Now, why are we doing it in the early morning or late at night? It's because when we're going to sleep or when we're waking up from sleep, we are naturally going through the phases that we want to go into when we're going into meditation. Throughout the day, I believe we are in delta, so that means we're very awake. Our brain is very active. But as we fall asleep, we go into theta and alpha and other brain waves that are slower, more relaxed, more calm. We're going to go through that anyway as we begin to sleep. So as you wake up from sleep and as you begin to sleep, we're already going through those phases. So as long as we get into the habit of waking up and taking a few minutes to meditate, maybe doing a guided meditation, focusing on ourselves, focusing on the feeling, and letting the thoughts go by, that is how we're going to maximize the effectiveness of our meditation. So the last question of today. Now we know about why we meditate. We know about how to meditate, and a couple more steps about how to maximize our meditation, how to get into it, which I also have, like I said, a guided meditation that you could follow. It's an induction meditation. Basically, it's like water rising up. It's imaginary that we just imagine water rising up. This helps us get aware of our bodies, our spatial position, and really feel all the different parts of our body, which helps us focus on the subconscious rather than all the thoughts coming in. The next question is, how do we know if we're doing it right? So we'll know if we're truly meditating correctly if we're not questioning everything. We're not judging and analyzing everything that we get. I'll give you an easy example. When we're laying down or sitting down and we're imagining the water rising up and we get thoughts, oh, is this working? Or we get thoughts, how do I look to other people right now? Or we get all these different kind of thoughts. Our analytical mind is going to try to answer these thoughts. But your consciousness is not the analytical mind. It is not that. That is one part of your system that you have control over. Who you are the awareness that is looking at the analytical mind. This might be a little confusing to some of you, but if I were to ask you a question right now, in your mind, if you were to ask myself this question, for example, have I really done any true meditation? Who is going to answer that question? You're going to say you. But the question that came up, you are the one paying attention to that question. Now, if you don't answer that question, that's fine, because you're the one paying attention to that question. I know maybe that's not the greatest example, but an easier example for me is, imagine your thoughts are like a river. These thoughts come into your mind, right? They come into your mind, and you are the one that looks at the thoughts. So when the thought comes, you don't have to answer it. You don't have to respond. You can say, I had a thought about this. And you basically say nothing to it. You just let it go by, and that thought passes by. That's like when you have something that you need to do and you have the thought, and then you forget it later. It's because the thought rolled away. It continued with the flow of the river. It's very simple, but that makes you see that you are actually the observer of the thoughts. And that's what we're going to get into when we do these meditations. So go ahead and watch this. The next video I have here, it's the guided meditation, the water rising induction. Thank you for being part of my YouTube channel. I really appreciate you for being here. I post all my videos on my Patreon, and you can go ahead and subscribe to me on YouTube. And you can follow me on Patreon. You'll get notifications when I upload videos. And I have some more other Patreon member only benefits. I really hope you stick with me with this journey, and let me know if there's any questions you have. I'll definitely make a video responding to your question, answering these questions. I want to make sure that you get to where you want to be and you have the right tools necessary. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video, all right?